Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be talking about lycanthropes in the Forgotten Realms,
hmm
and we're going to be using the Forgotten Realms wiki for all of our source material. I think this is going to be a really fun one. There's when you think about lycanthropes, you probably think about werewolves, but there are so many other kinds.
Yeah, I mean, that's the classic, right? The werewolf under the full moon.
Right.
But the Forgotten Realms has a lot more to offer than just that.
So much more, yeah. Like, we're rats, we're sharks, we're bears. I mean, there's a whole menagerie of different types of were creatures. But before we get into all of that, maybe we should kind of define what a lycanthrope is.
Yeah. Sure, yeah. So lycanthropy is
Yeah.
the ability to shapeshift between a human form and an animal form. And there's often this hybrid form in between.
hmm
Um, and it's not just a physical transformation. It also affects the mind and behavior,
Yeah.
um, you know, giving them animalistic urges and instincts.
Right. So it's almost like a merging of two beings into one. You have this human side and you have this animal side, and they're constantly kind of battling for control. And it's interesting because, you know, these tales of shapeshifters, they are deeply rooted in real world myths and legends.
Yeah, for sure.
So it makes you wonder, like, how these ancient fears and beliefs have sort of evolved into these really complex creatures that we see in the Forgotten Realms.
Sounds like the Forgotten Realms has taken those primal fears and
Yeah.
really kind of woven them into these captivating and nuanced beings.
Right, and that's what makes it so fascinating, I think. So our sources talk about a bunch of different types of lycanthropes. But let's start with what we're calling the big three. Werewolves, wererats, and werebears.
That sounds good.
So let's start with werewolves. They're probably the most iconic, I would say. For a good reason, you know? They're fierce predators, incredibly strong,
Mhm.
and they often operate in packs, much like wolves do.
Right, and those packs have a hierarchy, usually led by a powerful alpha.
Right, so there is some intelligence and organization there. It's not just like,
Right.
a mindless
It's
beast.
not just all instinct.
Right.
And there are different ways to become a werewolf.
Oh, really?
You can be born with lycanthropy, um, a curse that's passed down through your lineage, or you can be infected through a bite or a scratch.
Right, so the classic, like, you get bit, you become a werewolf. I
Exactly.
imagine being born with it would be different than
Yeah, definitely.
being infected by it.
Psychological effects.
Right.
Those who are born into it often have more control over their transformations,
Hmm.
whereas those who are infected might struggle with those involuntary shifts, especially during the full moon.
Makes sense.
And then there's the question of their alignment.
Okay.
While most werewolves are known for being chaotic,
Hmm.
and often followers of Malar, the god of the hunt, there are some interesting exceptions.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's actually a small sect of werewolves who worship Selûne, the goddess of the moon, and they see their lycanthropy as a divine gift from her.
That's really interesting. So they're not inherently evil.
Right, exactly.
That's cool. Okay, so let's move on to wererats. They seem to prefer, like, the shadows a little more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. They thrive in urban environments, lurking in the shadowy underbelly of cities, sewers, abandoned buildings, places most people wouldn't really want to go.
Yeah, you don't want to run into one of these guys.
Now,
And it's interesting because their behavior kind of mirrors that of real rats. They're cunning, they're stealthy, and they're known for being skilled thieves and scavengers.
right.
Um,
It makes you wonder if there are wererat crime syndicates.
I was just going to say, yeah, like, what kind of organized crime
Yeah.
could wererats get up to?
They could be pulling off heists,
Mhm.
manipulating events from the shadows.
Right.
But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of wererats is their relationship with humans.
What do you mean?
They often mate with humans.
Hmm.
However, their offspring are either normal humans or monstrous ratlings.
Ratlings, is that like a...
Basically giant, intelligent rats,
Hmm.
but they have humanoid hands.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it raises a lot of unsettling questions about
Yeah.
how these beings would integrate into.
Right, like, where do they fit in? Yikes. All right, so we've got the cunning wererat. Last but not least of the big three is the wereboar. What sets them apart?
Wereboars are all about raw power
Hmm.
and a really bad temper. They embody this unbridled fury of a wild boar, and they're always looking for a fight.
Sounds fun.
They're known for their aggression and brutish nature, but there's also a surprising layer of depth to them.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
Despite their fierce exterior, wereboars are fiercely loyal to their families, and they form these unbreakable bonds of friendship. And here's a twist for you. They often find acceptance among orcs.
Really? That's so interesting.
Yeah, their strength and ferocity makes them well-suited to Orcish culture,
Yeah.
and they can rise through the ranks and even become champions within the tribe.
Wow. It's interesting how, like, even these savage creatures can find kinship and purpose in these, like,
In unexpected places.
unexpected places. Yeah. So we've got werewolves, wererats, and wereboars. But our sources indicate that there are many more kinds of lycanthropes out there. It's like a whole menagerie of were creatures, each with their own unique traits and stories.
That's right.
So,
And we're just getting started.
yeah, we're just getting started. This is going to be fun.
It is. It's interesting. A lot of people in the Forgotten Realms, they fear lycanthropes, but these creatures also fear us.
That is interesting. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it from their perspective, they're living in a world that ostracizes them and hunts them, so they're constantly living in fear.
Right. And then there's that internal conflict, battling between their human and animal sides, trying to control their transformations,
Yeah.
facing prejudice from other races, and even threats from rival lycanthrope factions or those who hunt them.
So it's not just the physical danger of being a lycanthrope, but it's also this emotional and social toll that comes with it.
Exactly. It forces us to look beyond, that monstrous exterior and consider their perspective. They're not just mindless beasts. They're beings with emotions and desires and fears.
Right. So we talked about the different ways that one can become a lycanthrope. But what about the transformation itself? What happens when someone shifts from human to beast?
It's often described as very painful and violent. This overwhelming surge of primal energy that completely overtakes the person's body and mind. Bones cracking and reshaping, muscles bulging, senses sharpening, and in a matter of moments you have this completely different being.
Wow. So it's almost like a forced evolution.
Exactly.
This rapid and brutal shift from one form to another. And what about their abilities? Like, what new powers do they gain? Is it just enhanced strength and speed, or is there more to it?
Well, increased strength, speed, and agility are definitely hallmarks of lycanthropy, but they also gain enhanced senses, superior smell, hearing, night vision, and many develop, sharp claws and teeth. Basically natural weapons.
It sounds like a full sensory and physical upgrade.
Absolutely.
What about those unique abilities that we talked about earlier, like the werebears' ability to summon bears, or the wereshark being able to breathe underwater?
Yeah, those are some of the more fascinating and potent abilities.
Yeah.
I think it really highlights the connection between the lycanthrope and the animal that they transform into.
Right. It's almost like their animalistic nature grants them these specific skills and powers.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder about the nature of the curse itself. Like, is it simply a physical transformation? Or is there a deeper magical connection to the animal, like a merging of spirits or something? Okay, maybe that's a question for another time. But there's another classic lycanthrope trait that we have to address. The vulnerability to silver. Is that universal to all lycanthropes, or is that just a werewolf thing?
Well, it's most commonly associated with werewolves. Silver does seem to be a widespread weakness among lycanthropes. Silver weapons tend to bypass their natural defenses and inflict much more damage.
It makes you wonder why silver is so effective. Is there like a magical property to it, or is it more symbolic, like tied to ancient folklore?
There are a few theories. Some scholars believe that silver has a purifying effect. That disrupts the magical energies fueling the lycanthropy. Others suggest it's connected to the moon, the moon's association with silver, and the traditional link between werewolves and the full moon.
A little bit of lunar magic.
Exactly.
I like it. Regardless of the reason, it sounds like, carrying a silver-coated dagger is a wise precaution. For anyone venturing into the wilds of the Forgotten Realms,
Absolutely.
You never know when you might run into a shadowy figure lurking in the woods or a wererat in the sewers.
That's right.
Okay, so we've talked about individual types of lycanthropes, but let's talk about the dynamics between different groups. They often clash with each other.
They do.
So what are some of the major conflicts or rivalries that we see playing out in the Forgotten Realms?
Well, like many conflicts, it often boils down to territory and resources. For example, werewolves and werebears often inhabit similar forest environments, leading to clashes.
So is it like a predator-prey relationship?
I'd say it's more like a territorial dispute between two apex predators.
Okay.
Neither one willing to back down.
And I imagine those fights can get pretty brutal.
Oh, yeah.
Then you've got wererats, who are kind of operating on a whole other level.
Right. They're more focused on exploiting urban environments rather than competing for natural resources.
Right. So they don't really care about, wilderness territories.
No, they're more interested in establishing control over the underbelly of cities.
So like a shadow society.
Exactly.
Oh,
Operating parallel to human civilization.
that's fascinating. It makes you wonder how these different lycanthrope groups, with their varying motivations and environments, would interact with each other, if at all. Are there any instances of cooperation?
While there are definitely instances of conflict and distrust, there are also examples of cooperation, particularly when their interests align. For example, werewolves and werebears, both known for their ferocity, have been known to team up against a common threat, like a powerful vampire or a group of lycanthrope hunters.
Right, so they can put aside their differences when they need to.
When it's beneficial.
And it shows that they're not,
Right.
just mindless beasts.
Exactly. They're capable of strategic thinking,
Right.
forming alliances, and even engaging in complex social interactions.
So there is some level of intelligence there.
For sure.
Speaking of organized lycanthrope groups, our sources mention one that's particularly interesting, the People of the Black Blood. They're described as a cult that worships Malar.
Yeah, the People of the Black Blood. They're a pretty unsettling faction, known for their ruthlessness and bloodlust. They actively seek to spread lycanthropy, believing that it's a way to unleash their true primal nature and bring about a world ruled by instinct and chaos.
Sounds like a fun group.
Oh, yeah.
So are they actively trying to recruit new members or infect others with lycanthropy?
They are. They see it as a way to empower their ranks and weaken the grip of civilization. It's almost as if they view the world as this battleground between order and chaos. And they're trying to tip the scales in favor of chaos.
It's a stark reminder that lycanthropy is not just like a personal affliction, but a force that can have a much wider impact.
Yes.
It can be a tool for destruction.
It can be a weapon.
Right. So it's not just the people of the Black Blood that pose a threat. It's the presence of lycanthropes in general that really has an impact on
everyone in the Forgotten Realms.
Right.
It instills fear, breeds distrust, and forces people to constantly be on guard.
Right. Like you never know who around you might be a lycanthrope.
Right.
It's like living under a constant shadow.
Exactly.
So how do societies cope with this threat?
Well, some communities might have specialized guards or hunters who are trained to deal with lycanthrope threats. Others rely on magical wards or talismans for protection. And of course, the knowledge of silver's effectiveness is widespread. So you see a lot of silver-coated weapons and other defenses.
Right, because that's one of the few things that can actually hurt them.
Yeah.
It's interesting how the existence of lycanthropes has actually shaped the culture and the defenses of the Forgotten Realms.
It has.
They've become part of the fabric of society.
Right.
This constant reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the surface.
It really speaks to the power of these creatures. You know, their ability to instill fear and influence the very way that people live their lives.
Right. It's not just about like, one individual being a lycanthrope. It's about how that affects everyone around them.
Exactly.
So after learning all this, I'm a little apprehensive about my next trip into the wilderness.
Maybe you should take a silver-coated dagger with you.
Yeah, maybe I will. But in all seriousness, it's this blend of fear and fascination that makes lycanthropes so compelling.
It does.
They represent this wild, untamed part of ourselves.
Right, that primal energy.
That we try to control but can never fully suppress.
That link to our animalistic origins.
Right.
Which can be both alluring and terrifying.
It's that duality, that struggle between the human and the beast that I think really captivates us. And that's something that we'll explore further as we delve deeper into the psychology and philosophy of lycanthropy.
So we've talked about a lot, about lycanthropy and different types of lycanthropes.
We have.
Yeah, everything from the classic werewolf to the more obscure weird sharks and weird dragons.
Yeah.
But, one question that I keep coming back to is, beyond the shape-shifting,
right,
is there a common thread that connects all lycanthropes?
That's a good question.
What truly defines a lycanthrope?
At their core,
Yeah.
I think it's that duality. That they exist in this space between two worlds.
Right.
The human world of reason and society, and the animal world of instinct and primal urges.
Exactly. It's this constant grappling with their human and animal sides.
Yeah.
That struggle to find balance, and that's what makes them so captivating.
Right. And I imagine that would be like a very difficult experience to go through, to feel that surge of primal power, but also like the terrifying loss of control. The fear of harming those you care about.
Absolutely.
It's a very powerful concept.
And not just the fear of that transformation, but also the social consequences,
Right.
the weight of carrying this secret,
Yeah.
knowing that society often views lycanthropes with fear and disgust.
Yeah, and so many of them choose to live in isolation because of that.
They have to hide their true nature.
But at the same time, there's also this sense of awe and wonder associated with lycanthropes.
There is.
You know, they embody a connection to the natural world, this raw power and beauty that we as like civilized beings have maybe lost touch with.
Right, they represent this primal energy, this link to our animalistic origins.
Yeah.
That can be both alluring and terrifying.
Right. It's like they're holding up a mirror to our own nature,
They are.
you know, reminding us of that wildness that still lurks within us.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, are there some who might embrace that wildness?
Right.
See lycanthropy not as a curse, but as a gift.
Like a source of power.
Exactly.
Could that be a factor in the rise of groups like the people of the Black Blood
It's
who
possible.
want to spread lycanthropy?
Yeah, for them, the transformation might represent a liberation from societal constraints.
Yeah.
A return to a more primal state of being.
Right.
But the implications of widespread lycanthropy are huge,
Yeah.
affecting not just individuals, but entire societies.
We've talked about the fear and the prejudice, but how else does the presence of lycanthropes affect, like, culture, religion, politics in the Forgotten Realms?
Well, I imagine it would have a significant impact on the way people live their lives,
Right.
shaping their beliefs about the world and their relationship with nature.
For sure.
For instance, in regions with a strong lycanthrope presence, you might see the formation of specialized hunting parties or military orders dedicated to protecting communities,
Oh, yeah.
or the rise of religious sects that offer protection from war creatures,
Right.
or even those who go so far as to worship them as deities.
Wow. So it's not just a personal struggle.
Right.
It's a force that shapes civilizations.
It does.
Their fears, their defenses, their belief systems.
It's a constant reminder that the world is a wild and unpredictable place. You know, there are forces beyond our control that can transform us in ways we never imagined.
Both literally and figuratively.
Exactly.
It's a very humbling thought. So after all of this, all this exploration of lycanthropy, what's like the biggest takeaway that you want our listeners to remember?
I want them to remember that lycanthropes are more than just monsters. They are complex beings with their own motivations and societies and internal conflicts.
Right.
They embody the duality of nature, the beauty and the savagery, the allure and the danger that coexist within the natural world.
Right. And as we've discovered, the world of lycanthropes extends far beyond. You know the familiar werewolf?
That's right.
There's wererats and weresharks and weredragons. I mean, it really makes you appreciate the depth and richness of the Forgotten Realms.
It does.
And it highlights the power of storytelling.
For sure.
How these myths and legends can both reflect and shape our understanding of the world around us.
Absolutely.
I have to admit, I'm already thinking about how I can incorporate some of these creatures into my next D&D campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a wererat thief lurking in the city sewers. Or a noble werebear protecting a hidden grove.
There's so many possibilities.
Right.
Just remember to keep those silver weapons close at hand.
Right. You never know when they might come in handy.
Exactly.
Well, before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder.
Go.
If magic is powerful enough to transform someone into a were creature, could a skilled mage intentionally create new types of lycanthropes?
Ooh.
What fantastical creatures might they unleash upon the world? And what would the consequences be for the balance of power in the Forgotten Realms?
That's a good question.
And with that, we encourage you to continue your own deep dive into the fascinating world of lycanthropes. Until next time, may your adventures be filled with wonder and a healthy dose of caution.
Happy hunting, everyone.
And remember, the next full moon might be closer than you think.